Some of the pros of co-teaching include teacher-to-student ratio, which is, as we all know, a big problem in many of our classrooms. As it is, there are far more students than there are teachers. And by implementing co-teaching, it lessens that burden. You now have two teachers to carry the load of teaching an entire classroom. Not to mention, you have two teachers to help with supplies. You have two teachers to help with classroom management. You have two teachers to help with disciplinary issues. So overall, I mean, it's a great pro because you now are not alone with a group of possibly 30 kids or more in a classroom. Secondly, it would be great to have two different teaching styles because it's no secret that everyone learns differently. All of our students are going to learn in their own way. Therefore, to have various teaching styles within one classroom, you never know which one will benefit your students more. Some students may learn by one teacher's way of teaching or presenting material, while another student may learn by the other teacher's method. Neither is wrong, neither is better. It's all a matter of what works best for the students, which should be our top priority anyway. Third would be the sharing of responsibilities. You now have another teacher who is responsible for the success of your students. You have another teacher that's responsible for planning. You have another teacher that's responsible for materials. You have another teacher that's responsible for classroom activities and the planning of homework assignments. So you're not alone in it. It feels good to know that you have someone else who's trying to accomplish the same goal as you. And finally, there would be, hopefully, there would be an increase in classroom control because you don't have one person trying to manage a group of, for instance, if it's middle school or high school, you don't have one person trying to manage a room full of teenagers. Whereas when you're co-teaching, you have two teachers. So even if one teacher is teaching their lesson for the day, if one teacher is in the front of the class, you still have another teacher to help kind of maintain and control the atmosphere of the classroom. Some of the cons include the fact that one person does not have sole control of the classroom. So that means there has to be a certain level of compromise. There has to be a certain level of mutual respect between the two individuals. And sadly enough, some people really struggle with that. So that could potentially be one con. Also, there has to be an understanding that personalities can have a potential to clash. The reality is, we as humans, we're not going to always get along. We're not going to always agree. We're not going to always see eye to eye. But we have to be mature enough to be able to work past those issues. For instance, I could be extremely organized and be partnered with someone who's extremely unorganized. I could be really firm in the way that I manage my classroom, and they could be very laxed in the way that they manage theirs. But there has to be communication. There has to be a certain level of compromise between the two to establish an environment that works best for both teachers and, most importantly, for the students. Thirdly, you have to understand that kids don't always have a filter. A lot of times they say exactly what's on their mind. It's not always a bad thing, but you have to understand that students are going to have favorite teachers. Students are going to have teachers whose teaching style they prefer over others. And that's their preference, that's their prerogative. So if they choose to prefer your co-teacher's teaching method over yours, you can't be upset about it. And don't be surprised if you see that the students aren't shy about vocalizing their favoritism. Finally, a con could be if you are partnered with someone who doesn't necessarily pull their weight, so where you feel like you're doing all the planning, you're doing all the lessons, you're doing all of the, you're preparing all of the homework. If you are partnered with a person who isn't as dedicated or as committed as you are, then that's a definite recipe for disaster. There are various ways that you can ensure that you'll be effective as a co-teacher. One being that you have to have scheduled meeting times. You have to have a time that you sit down with your co-teacher and just discuss what's going on in the classroom, what's working, what's not working, how did this lesson go, how did you perceive this lesson, how do you think the students received what I taught this day. And you have to be open to both praise and criticism, because the reality is no teacher is perfect. So there may be things that your co-teacher says, I don't think this went over well. But on the other hand, there may be things where they may say, oh, I think the students really loved that. You have to be open to it both ways. But there has to be a set time where you schedule that we are going to discuss what's going on within the classroom. Second, there has to be open communication. As I stated earlier, you have to be open to criticism. You have to be open to suggestions, because they may know more than you. Their method may work better than the method you've been trying. And if you're easily offended by the fact that they're trying to give you a suggestion, then that probably won't go over too well. But if you are willing to embrace the fact that we both have a common goal, we both have a task we're trying to achieve, then it should go smooth. Third, you have to have organization. It's not like when you're in a classroom by yourself, and if things go wrong, you can just wing it, or you can just, go off of your plan for the day. But when you're working with another teacher, things have to be organized, things have to be structured, because anything that you do doesn't only impact you, it impacts the other teacher, it impacts the students, it's all connected. So organization is definitely key. I think co-teaching can be an amazing thing if it's done the right way. If both teachers are on the same page, if both teachers are together in their planning, if they're together in their organization, if they're on one accord, if their egos aren't clashing, if they are of the understanding that we are here for the students, it can make for an amazing environment for an entire classroom. My pros, personally, I think my biggest pro would be the fact that I generally get along with everyone. I'm good with compromising. I'm good with just working together with other people. And yeah, I think that in a scenario such as that, it can be a very positive experience for everyone.